Backroads Bill Podcast. I'm Ben, and a very happy Christmas Eve to all of you who are watching it on the day of release. If you're watching it after, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays. Hopefully everything went well. And this week we have an amazing episode for you, a really cool episode actually. A little bit of reminiscing, a little bit of interesting stuff when it comes to the outdoors and to Northern Ontario, because unfortunately Bill today was not able to make it. It was, he had some things that came up, so we brought in a very special guest, and he set this up. It was very gracious of him, and today's guest is really cool, really special. I think a lot of people are going to like it. It is tied to his, if you looked at the thumbnail and you look at the title, you probably already know what this is, but it is tied to his Beta Day article that he wrote, his column he wrote earlier on. So let's get right into it for this Christmas Eve edition of the Backroads Bill Podcast. First, though, let us thank today's lead sponsor, the North Bay Regional Health Center Foundation.
We often talk about the rhythm of life in North Bay. For Amanda, that rhythm was fast. Hockey practices, baseball games, juggling a full-time career, and keeping up with two energetic boys. But life hit pause after routine surgery led to a call she never expected. Stage 2 breast cancer. No symptoms, no warning. Suddenly, Amanda was facing a double mastectomy, reconstruction, weeks of chemotherapy and radiation treatments, and several additional surgeries. The path ahead was overwhelming. Through every stage, one question stayed with her. How do I keep being mom for my boys? Amanda's care team at the North Bay Regional Health Center made all the difference. They understood how deeply she wanted to hold on to familiar routines, cheering from the stands, being there at bedtime, staying present in the moments that gave her strength. Their compassion kept her connected to the two people who kept her fighting. She stayed present. She stayed grounded. She stayed mom. This holiday season, help ensure patients have access to the exceptional care they need during life's most challenging moments. Your gift helps patients like Amanda stay connected to the people they love while strengthening healthcare for families across our region. Visit nbrhcfoundation.ca or call 705-495-8125 to give.
So, in a very rare instance, Bill was not able to join us this week, but he did send us a really interesting guest, potentially his first ever podcast appearance. We are graced today for this Christmas Eve episode. This wasn't recorded on Christmas Eve because he's a busy man this time of year. We have Santa on the Backroads Bill Podcast. Santa.
Oh, ho, ho. Good to be in the Clark Communications studio, a long way from the geographic North Pole. That's not the magnetic pole either.
No. So Santa, it's first of all, welcome in. Of course, this is your one of your first forays into podcasting. Why the Backroads Bill Podcast?
Oh, I think that's just where else? I mean, the Backroads, Santa is all over the backroads of Northern Ontario and all over the world. So I thought, what better way than to get the message out is through the Backroads Bill Podcast, which reaches a lot of people on all the platforms.
It's true. So you talked about Northern Ontario. You fly over it every Christmas Eve. What is the first landmark that you look for when you're up north here?
Well, coming from the North Pole down through Hudson Bay and James Bay, you know, you're going along that coast, been up to Fort Severn on Hudson Bay, the furthest northern community. So I usually look for that because there's some lights there, and then Pewanak and Attawapiskat and all the communities along the coast until you get down to Moose Factory and Moosonee. So that's the first thing I look for as far as lights are concerned.
So obviously weather is always unpredictable this time of year. What do you think is harder? Delivering your presents in the midst of a blizzard, right? Lots of snow happening, or navigating a Northern Ontario back road during, well, you don't really do this, but the spring breakup, you know, when things, because you're around during that time, but you're not delivering presents. But in your experience, what do you think would be worse, the blizzard or that kind of spring when everything starts thawing?
Well, Ben, I know you've been a good little boy, and that's a good question for Santa. I know you try, but I think, and the reindeer are really good in the blizzard. They know their way. So in the muddy nature of the springtime, Santa has a lot of time with that, a lot of difficulty with that sleigh. So I prefer the blizzards.
The blizzards. Interesting. Would you put a polar bear instead of reindeers? Have you considered that?
Oh, that kind of reminds me of that Coca-Cola commercial from way back.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, a little bit. No, the reindeer we need all that power, and the polar bears are just good to look at. And I've seen so many of them around Fort Severn. That was an epic trip that we've had over many, many years.
I know it's one of Bill's favorite. He talks about when he got trapped inside he was in the cabin. That was a neat little episode. Now we've had a lot.
I know Backroads Bill. He's been a good little boy too.
There you go. What does he ask for Christmas? Did he give you? Can you divulge the secret?
I think he's asking for this book here.
The book?
This book, apparently Outdoor Experiential Learning in Canada, published by Canadian scholars, just out. I think he wants that book because he has a chapter in that book, believe it or not, in outdoor experiential education and school trip preparedness.
Kevin Kears and Tim Butler? I
believe. They're going to be apparently on the Backroads Bill podcast in the new year.
Heard. Yep, we have been, me and Bill have been in contact with them, which is really neat. And one of the things I thought was interesting, speaking of your relationship with Bill, was his latest article, something a little bit different this year. You made an appearance on his postcard, which was kind of cool, his little card he puts out every year. But he had people come in and write you questions to Santa.
Oh, yes, there were a whole bunch of questions from all kinds of people that apparently have been on the Backroads Bill podcast.
They have been. We had Wob Rice, who was on early in the year, talking about.
He's a good little boy too.
Yeah,
and he's going to be shooting a movie regarding his last book.
Who else? We had Hap Wilson was on there that we've had on. We weren't able to get an answer from Adam Schultz, unfortunately, but he's been on a couple of times. We had Roy McGregor was one of the first ones in that article.
Oh, I know Roy McGregor. He's a great Canadian author.
So out of the ones that you got in, what were some of the ones that stood out to you?
Well, Roy McGregor asked me about Santa about the 3 crosses in Mattawa. So, we always see those going through Mattawa on Highway 17, so I had to explain that to Roy. That was one thing. And I think Santa was asked by Wob what was one of the most interesting things in the Sudbury Basin, that geology basin. So Santa told him that, Lake Wanabate is an entire lake within an entire city, and that's a worldwide phenomena, a whole lake inside an entire city.
That's impressive.
Oh, and I think Hap Wilson, he asked about who helped train Pierce Bronson in the movie Grey Owl, and of course said and knew that it was Hap Wilson himself that showed Pierce Bronson how to canoe and all those outdoor skills that are featured in The Great Imposter, Grey Owl, Archie Valeni.
I think if you go back to that podcast, I believe we talk about. I know we talked about it off mic. I believe it's in the episode a little bit talking about his experience. If you could have one guest, because I know you're a fan of the podcast, if you could have one guest next year, 2026, who would you like to have on the podcast? Anybody, even if they're not possible or whatever, who would you love to see on?
Oh, that's a good question, Ben. I've been thinking about that, reaching out to certain people. I've thought about Canadian actors. I thought about Canadian athletes that maybe were born and raised in Northern Ontario or had time in Northern Ontario. And so I'm still working on that. I thought about Mark Carney. That would be good to have on the. I'll even settle for Charlie Angus if you'd ever get back to me.
It would be nice. So we're talking Northern Ontario. You're up there in the sky delivering all these presents. Now, Northern Ontario is a pretty big place, but a little bit of a blip on the radar for you because you're going all over the world. What is the most Northern Ontario thing you've seen from the sky?
They're called the forest circles, or the fairy circles. They're round impressions in the boreal forest all across the north, and they're kind of like electric batteries. They're formed from methane gas and the like. I think Backroads Bill wrote a story about it. If you Google Backroads Bill Village Media Forest Circles, it'll come right up. But they're really interesting. All these round circles all the way, and you can only see them from the air. So Santa has a great vantage point.
That is literally the perfect vantage point for you guys. If you could travel, this is a good one. Now you can't time travel, right? I do not think that's part of your powers. But if you could travel to one moment in Northern Ontario history, where are you going and why?
Oh, I was thinking about this. I would like to go back to first of all, I'd like to go back to about 1849 to see what happened at the Mica Bay incident with Chief Shingwak. And Chief Shingwak was a real visionary. And then fast forward to the next year, 1850, where he was one of the signatories of the Robinson-Huron Treaty, along with other chiefs. I would really like to have been a fly in the wall at that particular moment in time, because that was significant to Canadian history and where we are today with regards to truth and reconciliation.
That's true, and I believe we have an episode on that one as well. One of the earlier ones we did. That might be an interesting one, I think, maybe to revisit a little bit, because I know that one, the Oba Lake drug bust, was another one that was...
the Oba Lake with the Satan's Choice. And imagine that, talking about the president of a motorcycle club, the Satan's Choice, and the largest drug bust in Canada, and the Wolverine Canoe. The
Wolverine Canoe, which was a big thing. Probably the most interesting thing that came out of the whole... that whole story. So
they were made in Wawa. It was a front to this epic drug bust.
Mm-hmm. So you meet a kid, and they, because I know, well, if you know Bill, you know that he does a lot of outdoor education, which is a big part of it. And they say history is boring, right? A lot of kids will say that. Not an interesting thing for a lot of young kids, which, I think that's something you grow into. What Northern Ontario story do you tell that kid to change their mind?
Oh, I like to tell the story about the late 1950s into the 60s, the Cold War crash between a fighter jet pilot with Gaylord True for the United States and a bomber north of Constance Lake, northwest of Constance Lake near Hearst, and the crash. And you have to read the Backroads Bill story on this. We've had Denny True, who has since passed, on the podcast, and you should listen to that podcast, because that's a story that leads us up to even last spring when Backroads Bill and Brian Emblin went in there and put up a plaque. And of course, the connectivity, the relationship between father and son in that crash, and how all this came about over a few years. That's an epic story.
Mm-hmm. And Brian, another man who wrote into you, of course, friend of the show. We've had him on a lot of times.
Oh, that Brian, he asked Santa about some navigation questions and some trickery questions about latitude and longitude and the Universal Transverse Mercator and the compass. And so I kind of set him straight on all that.
It's almost that time of year. Early mornings at the rink, fresh notebooks and backpacks, and a community gearing up for another great season of varsity sports. At Source for Sports North Bay, we're proud to be part of it all. Whether it's finding your kid's first pair of skates, gearing up for tryouts, or outfitting your team for the season ahead, we've got you covered. Because here, we're not just a sports store, we're neighbors, coaches, teammates, and fans. And we're proud to cheer you on every shift, step, and stride of the way. Visit Source for Sports North Bay at 1321 Fisher Street and let us help you along your way. What do you think your favorite, you're going to have to channel your inner what you know about Bill, but what do you think Bill's favorite adventure with Brian has been?
Oh.
Because they've been a lot, and not just ones that have been stories or podcasts.
Yeah. I think Santa, having been a fan of Backroads Bill and his stories, we just talked about that Cold War crash and the fighter jet. The other one are these mysterious Bethnal Springs near Gogama, Ontario, where there was a spa there in the 1920s. If you can imagine people getting off the train in the middle of nowhere in the 1920s to go to this health spa. And when you go there today, Santa flies over it, you can see the cistern where the water came out of the ground, the pipes leading to what was cabins. But Santa has never seen any photos of Bethnal Springs. It's truly one of Northern Ontario's biggest mysteries. And if you ask Santa what he could do for Backroads Bill is to find some photographs of Bethnal Springs near Gogama.
Well, it might be a Christmas miracle.
Might be.
If you have to get there. So Northern Ontario, obviously, again, very well acquainted with it, especially from up top. If you were going to describe it in 3 words to somebody who has never been there, how would you describe Northern Ontario?
Oh, vast and magnificent. And actually, you need a few more words because it comes from this book that was published for Ontario's 150th anniversary by Ernie F. and Matt Bray. It's called A Vast and Magnificent Land. And I know Backroads Bill often uses that phrase, and that's where it comes from. Vast and magnificent, a vast and magnificent land. That's the name of the book.
Wow. So we on this podcast, we've talked about Sasquatch. We haven't talked about aliens yet, but we do. It is on the list. I know that me and Bill have been talking about it. It is on the list. We've been very fortunate enough to have a Sasquatch investigator on. We've had we had a man tell a story who used to be a police officer. Both those episodes were fantastic. What is the most believable Northern Ontario legend that you have heard?
Oh,
lots of legends out there. Bethnal Springs being one of them as well.
The most believable legend, I think on the Backroads Bill podcast, there was Suzanne Sharon who wrote the book Wolfman. And so that's a very believable legend. The Wolfman, Joe LaFlamme, was a showman, and he actually took his dog team, which were made up of wolves, on planes down to New York City, outside of Times Square. So he was a Northern Ontario character, kind of like, I think, Troy Horchervies and Project Grizzly, the Bear Suit Man, which I think is going to be an upcoming episode on the Backroads Bill podcast.
Keep your eye out for January, yeah.
Keep your eye out for January. So that's a believable legend, and those kinds of characters are all believable because they existed. And from that, of course, things get embellished, but nonetheless, they're really believable because they were real people.
Has Santa ever fought a grizzly bear? And if not, who do you think would win?
Oh, I think we need some bear bells for that. That's why Santa always has these bells just in case of that. Because I think for a grizzly bear, Santa might become second.
So we talked about most believable. What is the least believable legend that you secretly want to be true?
Oh, we're the Clark Communications Studios in North Bay, Ontario, and out in the middle of Lake Nipissing are the Manitou Islands, and there's a Vicine and Nipissing First Nation legend that talks about the young woman who jumped into the fire. The Iroquois were the Nipissing had sought refuge on the island, and the young lady fell in love with an Iroquois warrior and jumped in the fire. Apparently, to this day, in the wind, you can still hear her screaming. And on the Manitou Islands, there's been a failed mine where there's been a uranium mine where there were some fatalities. And also there was a dance hall there once that burned down. So there's some mystique and energy about that. So there's a legend I hope it is true because it's a wonderful, wonderful setting.
I wonder if we could get anybody on to talk about it. We'll have to see if you have any connections there, Santa.
Santa does know.
Oh, there we go. And obviously, one of the things we had Ray on, who was from down south, down in the Sioux, Michigan area, and we talked about these things called Uperlights, the glow rocks, however you want to call them. Have you ever seen the shoreline? I don't know if you have UV lights underneath your sled, but have you ever seen a shoreline light up like those glowing rocks near Lake Superior?
Santa listened to that podcast with Ray Jeanette from up Terrace Bay, Scriber Way, and about the fire rocks that glow. I've never seen the shoreline of Lake Superior light up, but again, when Santa's flying over, much like James Bay and Hudson Bay, when you fly along Lake Superior, all these small communities at night are all lit up in the middle of the wilderness. And that's like, again, most of Ontario, Northern Ontario only has about 5% of the population and most of the landmass. And so people are distributed, people of the land and people in communities. There are areas. So when you see these lights, you know people are in places where they want to be, and they're in this vast and magnificent land, as I said earlier, called Northern Ontario.
Mm-hmm. So we just a couple weeks ago at this point, we had on Steve Hayward. We talked about the snowmobiling and kind of how it's changed and where it's gone and what it's like now.
I caught that podcast, by the way.
Yeah. Do you consider your sled or your sleigh a trail machine?
Oh, well, we have motorized and non-motorized pursuits, like cross-country skiing and snowshoeing being non-motorized, and kick sledding and dog teams and people that walk out in the ice and go ice fishing. And then, of course, there's ATVing and quads and snow machines. No, I don't. I think Santa's sleigh is just magical. It doesn't fit anywhere but just being magical.
Would you ever take your sleigh down some of those trails?
Oh, we've talked about, and Backroads Bill, I think, has written recently about logging roads and how important they are for access. I would take my sleigh down a lot of those primary logging roads, and there's a couple that come to mind. You can drive on a logging road all the way from Long Lac on Highway 11 North, south, all the way to Terrace Bay on Highway 17. It's one of the longest primary logging roads. I know Backroads Bill just wrote a story about going from Webwood, which is just west of Espanola, all the way north, 160 kilometers, to the little community, no one lives there now, of Ramsey, which is near Biscotasing, where actually Grey Owl had some time at, and the Sultan Industrial Road that goes from the Height of Land on Highway 144 all the way across to Chapleau. That was an epic adventure I read about in Village Media. And so roads like that, but Santa sometimes follows those roads at night because he has to know where he's going to deliver the presents for all the good little girls and boys.
I was going to say you're obviously coming from the north now. Sometimes you fly, sometimes you don't. But if you were going up to a place like Fort Severn, which is the most populated or the most northern populated area, and you wanted to get all the way down to, let's say, the U.S. border, or kind of, Toronto, Windsor, that area, how would you get there? What roads would you take? What would the route look like?
Let's not forget that because of the Cold War and all the ballistic missiles, those intercontinental missiles that once belonged at the NORAD base in North Bay, Ontario, because NORAD tracks somewhere. There's a tracker app where you can see where Santa goes from north to south and east and west all over the world. And so Santa really, really appreciates the geography of this vast and magnificent land. So what was the last part of your question there? What route would you take from Fort Severn down to Windsor?
Where would you go?
Well, there's a lot of isolated communities in northwestern Ontario, but from Fort Severn, you want to make a direct line after stopping at all those communities to Sioux Lookout, which is a bit of a transportation hub, and then make your way following that coast of Lake Superior. The coastlines of all the Great Lakes are important. So that's the way. And then, of course, eventually you've got Highway 11 north and south and Highway 69. So there's lots of ways. And you can fly over open water. And it's that time of the year that Santa really, he's so busy, he has to be quick.
He has to be quick. So when we look at the past year, obviously you're an avid listener, avid reader, favorite episode or story in the last calendar year?
Santa was astonished about that storm on June 21st that hit that Mattawa area, Saint-Marie Champlain Provincial Park and the Canadian Ecology Centre. And Santa knows Backroads Bill. He's the founder of the Canadian Ecology Centre, and how that really affected those two places. They remain closed as Santa speaks right now. And a lot of the trees, there's actually probably hundreds of thousands, if not millions of trees that have had to be cleaned up and chipped and removed. And so that's a place where mitigation is occurring and a real regreening. The park will take a long time to look again how it did, but it will spring back because that's what nature is all about. So that's one story for sure that Santa was, I don't know if Santa enjoyed hearing and listening to, but that's a story that had a real impact at this part of the world.
Let's move on. Before we get you out of here, Santa, we got some quick fire questions. You talked about having to go quick.
Yeah,
so you got it. Okay, so you got a couple of.
These are zingers, eh?
These are zingers, and you got to
sit up in his chair.
You can't think really
Rudolph,
fast.
I better get Rudolph in here, buddy.
So, best Northern Ontario winter sound: crunching snow or a distant train whistle?
Crunching snow.
One thing you always pack for a northern trip?
GPS unit.
Worst gift to bring on a canoe trip?
A cooler.
Okay. The better Northern Ontario snack when you're out there: jerky or trail mix?
Oh, the best is trail mix. Less salt in it.
What's your trail mix?
Oh, the good old raisins and peanuts and those kinds of things.
Oh, you're not like an M&M?
Oh, yeah, no. The M&Ms for sure. A real mixture. M&Ms are really kind of an addendum to Gorp. But, yeah, you love looking for them because you almost ferret that out in the trail mix bag.
Would you rather do a night paddle or a night snowshoe?
A night paddle.
Favorite Northern Ontario destination? You have to pick one.
Oh,
it's quick fire. I'm putting you on the spot.
Hornpain, it's the center of Ontario. And Backroads Bill and Brian discovered that a long time ago. So that's a favorite destination because will have a lot to do with this vast and magnificent land.
Well, Santa, thank you for joining us. Of course, with you being busy over the Christmas, have a great Christmas holiday, and we hope it goes smoothly for you.
I really appreciate being on this podcast and kind of subbing in for Backroads Bill. I wonder where the heck he is anyway.
I don't know. He's skipping out. So a big thank you to Santa for coming on and spreading his words of wisdom to our audience. From Bill and I, we both hope that you have a great and safe holiday season, regardless of how you celebrate. And we look forward to the new year and some great new guests, which we do have some cool ones lined up, including our New Year's Eve guests next week for our final show of 2025 next Wednesday. And like always, you can find new episodes of the Backroads Bill podcast every single Wednesday on your favorite podcast platform, whether it's Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Of course, the video version is available on the North Bay Echo YouTube channel, and you can find the audio and video and everything else on northbayecho.ca, where we have this podcast alongside a host of other North Bay-centric podcasts. And you can also check out our newsletter, Echo Essentials. So that wraps things up. We hope you have a Merry Christmas and a Happy Holiday from us here at the Backroads Bill Podcast. And we'll see you next week for our New Year's Eve special.